The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Live from Los Angeles.
Hooah! Here we go!
This is exciting, isn't it?
We'll do it live. We'll do it live! Fuck it!
Fuck it, we'll do it live! Greetings, Deado Universe. How the hell are you? It's Kyle Plouffe. Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Stephen Myers and FBI agent Sean Johnson. I've been getting a lot of good feedback on that episode. First interview, really, we did on the show since Joe Exotic, so that was exciting. And yeah, a lot of people said they were going to go buy Stephen Myers' book, The Treehouse. If you want to go check that out, it's on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. And yeah, we've got some more interesting guests coming up. Reaching for the stars here on Death and Entertainment. So hope everybody's doing well. Want to jump into just a few quick stories here. And starting with, I've been getting some emails and some messages asking about Alex Murdaugh and what the hell was going on with that trial, because I know that his conviction was overturned. So I looked it up for you. Alex Murdaugh's 2023 conviction for murder, those convictions were overturned. And a lot of people are freaking out, being like, oh my God, is he going to get out of jail? We'll get into it. It was overturned on May 13th, 2026. But that does not mean that he was found innocent somehow. There was some exculpatory evidence that all of a sudden proved he didn't do anything. It's much dumber and more ridiculous than that. Alex Murdaugh was tried for the June 7th, 2021 murders of his wife, Maggie Murdaugh, and son, Paul. On March 2nd, 2023, he was convicted of 2 counts of murder, 2 weapons charges, and Judge Clifton Newman sentenced him to life in prison. The centerpiece was the kennel video, apparently. His son Paul had recorded a short video around 8:44 near the kennels, shortly before prosecutors said the murders happened. Multiple witnesses identified 3 voices on the video: Paul, Maggie, and Alex. Now, this is huge because Alex had told the investigators that he wasn't at the kennels that night. It was somewhere different. Where were you? I don't know. Any place else than where my son got murdered by me? It was reported that Paul's phone camera activated at around 8:45 p.m., just before, at 8:44 and 49 seconds. And that video was central because it appeared to place Alex with Maggie and Paul about 5 minutes before they stopped using their phones. The digital timeline just made everything worse. Paul was reading his final text around 8:48 p.m. Maggie's phone showed that she had just read a text seconds later, and investigators believed they were killed around 8:50 p.m. So within a minute of reading their final text, they were shot, and brutally. Paul was shot twice with a shotgun, and Maggie was shot around 5 times with an AR-style rifle. Then came Alex's movement data. His phone was inactive for a stretch after the murders, and then just mysteriously, mythologically, came to life around 9:02 p.m., recording 283 steps in a few minutes. Well, isn't that nice? When you're trying to conceal a murder, that's equivalent to 283 steps. Yeah, I've been seeing you've been walking back and forth from a ditch in the woods in your backyard. Yeah, prepping for a 5K. His vehicle left around 9:07 p.m., and at 9:08, it passed near where Maggie's phone was later found by the road. Prosecutors were saying that was the trip he ditched her phone before visiting his mom, because that's what you want to do. These killers, they seem so badass, and then after shit goes down, they're like, I want to see my mommy. Where's my mama? Data showed he returned to the house around 10 p.m., drove to the kennels around 10:05, and called 911 at 10:06, saying he had found Maggie and Paul shot, not breathing. So clearly he was going to the mom's house to try to build an alibi, being like, I wasn't even there. And had his voice not been caught on Paul's video 5 minutes before he was killed, he might have got away with it. There was also firearm and residue evidence. Prosecutors said the murder weapons were never found, but testimony included evidence about a missing blackout-style rifle associated with the family, similar casings around Maggie's body, and a blue rain jacket found at his mother's home with a large amount of gunshot residue inside. So it was a kind of a casual killing. He didn't have his button up on. Undid the buttons, let all the residue go right into the warm interior of his jacket. A caretaker testified she'd seen him bring a blue something into his mother's home days after the killings. So he gets rid of the guns, but not the jacket. Mama said, I'm going to be cold if I didn't wear my jacket. The state also leaned hard into motive. The prosecution argued he was about to be exposed for stealing from clients and his law firm, and that the murders created sympathy, distraction, and time. Isn't that nice? When you go from sleazeball lawyer Saul Goodman type crimes, stealing, and then you're just like, you know what? If my whole family died, people would like me more. Maybe they'd feel a little bad. Maybe they'd forget about me stealing their pension from their grandmother. The South Carolina Supreme Court summarized the prosecution's theory as the murders shifted attention away from him and bought him time to prevent his financial crimes from being uncovered. Jeez Louise. Peppers and or cheese. The defense's strongest points were that there was no direct physical evidence tying him to pulling the trigger. No murder weapons, no confession, no surveillance video of the killings, and no blood-spattered clothing entered into evidence. Well, yeah, when you get rid of everything, it's kind of hard to have that. Murdaugh testified, admitted lying about being at the kennels, admitted stealing, but denied killing Maggie and Paul. Well, then why are you lying about being at the kennels? It's just when you're caught that bad, you're like, okay, well, I mean, I was there, but I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even see nothing. I didn't hear nothing. So you get all this evidence, and it's very clear that he is the perpetrator of these crimes. So why was the conviction overturned? Well, it turns out there was some motor mouth Becky Hill working for the courts. The conviction was overturned because of jury interference by Colleton County Clerk of Court. Wow. Colleton County Clerk of Court. Whoa. Clerk of Court. Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill. Murdaugh's lawyers argued Hill improperly influenced jurors by telling them not to believe him or his defense, by pushing them toward a quick guilty verdict, and by playing a role in the removal of a juror thought to be favorable to the defense. I mean, it's like, what are we doing? When you have it that pinned down, you don't need to cheat. The Supreme Court's opinion said Murdaugh alleged Hill told jurors not to believe his testimony and defense evidence, pressured them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and misrepresented information to get a juror removed. I mean, you had everything dead to rights. You don't have the gun, but you got the bodies. You got his jacket he was wearing that night covered in gunshot residue. You got his voice on a video. Do you really need to stack the deck any more than that? He's already stacked it against himself. At the post-trial hearing, one juror said Hill told jurors to, quote, watch his actions and watch him closely, and that Hill's comments made it feel like Murdaugh was already guilty. The court also focused on Hill's book project. Apparently, this Becky Hill, she wrote a book about the trial, and later it was pulled because she plagiarized it. Another clerk testified that Hill wanted to write a book and said a guilty verdict would be the best way to sell copies. Making copies. Talk about trying to do the right thing for the wrong reason. The quickest we could put it behind bars, the better for my book. And then the book was plagiarized. This is just a classic overconfident person thinking they can get away with shit. The Supreme Court said Hill was drawn by the siren call of celebrity. Being the county clerk is going to be the siren call of celebrity. Imagine how lame that would be at a party. People who've done big shit, changed everyone's lives, and then you're stuck next to this woman being like, you know, I was the Colleton County clerk in South Carolina when Alex Murdaugh was put on trial. Who gives a fuck? So when an officer of the court privately communicates with jurors about a case, the law presumes prejudice, and the state has the burden to prove the verdict was not affected. The South Carolina Supreme Court said Hill's comments were not harmless or casual. She clearly advised jurors to find Murdaugh and his evidence not credible and essentially urged the guilty verdict. The court said the jury was improperly influenced by an elected court official who had authority over the jury, and the state could not prove that there was no reasonable possibility that the verdict was affected. So, yeah, even though all the evidence kind of shows that this man is, without a doubt, the killer, there's still a technicality. And the Supreme Court also went on to give some guidance about the next trial. It said, lay back on the financial crimes, because it said, quote, they went far too long and far too deep into inflammatory details that were not truly necessary to prove motive. So yeah, they probably just recounted exact details, really tried to bury this guy for what a piece of garbage he is. And the next judge is like, all right, we don't have to do all that. We understand. He fucking ripped a bunch of people off, stole a ton of money. And that's enough motive to want to have people feel bad for him or distract them enough to not pursue it. The court calculated the state spent about 12 and a half hours over 10 days presenting financial crime evidence and said the state could have made its motive case in a fraction of that time. So they're saying the retrial is going to be leaner, less sprawling, more focused on the murders themselves, the kennel video, the timeline, phone data, car data, statements, and forensic evidence. So that all goes to be said. He's not walking out of jail anytime soon. He is still in prison firmly. The financial crimes have not been overturned. Murdaugh is just simply getting a new murder trial, which means he gets to take field trips for a couple months. He's serving a 27-year state sentence and a 40-year federal sentence for financial crimes. So even with the murder convictions vacated, he's not walking free. Prosecutors have said they are planning to retry him. The South Carolina Attorney General's office has also said all legal options are on the table. Devon, get the table! Including potentially seeking the death penalty at retrial. Oh, would that suck? You're like, hey, got my conviction vacated. Oh, fuck, I'm getting killed now. But it's not set in stone yet. There's going to be pretrial fights. There's going to be arguments over where the trial should be held because now everybody knows about it. They're not going to get a clean jury pool. How to pick a jury that's not been saturated by years of coverage. How much financial crime evidence comes in, whether the defense can present alternative suspect theories, and what safeguards will prevent anything like the Becky Hill mess from ever happening again. God, how mad are you if you're anyone that has to go and retry this guy because of Becky Hill's fuck-ups? So let's see what happened to Becky Hill. Oh, Becky Hill, the former Collection County Clerk of Court in South Carolina, pleaded guilty to 4 state charges stemming from her actions during and after the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. She avoided prison time and was instead sentenced to 3 years of probation, 100 hours of community service, and full financial restitution. The judge stated her punishment would have been much harsher had prosecutors been able to prove she tampered with the jury. Oh, so they're saying they couldn't prove that she tampered with the jury. So she admitted to showing sealed graphic crime scenes to a media member and subsequently lying under oath about the incident during a court hearing, and misconduct in office 2 counts, admitting to taking improper bonuses and using her elected office to promote her self-published book about the trial for personal profit. Now, I'm not saying she can't write a book about the thing, but God, to be so obsessed. If it was such a big thing, you could have gotten a deal. But I do know people who have self-published. In fact, we interviewed one guy who did a self-published book on behalf of someone else during the whole Diddy saga, and they made quite a substantial amount of money. But I believe was sued. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, it is insane how much money you can get from self-published. So no worries, Alex Murdaugh's not going anywhere. He is more than likely going to die in prison just based off the financial crimes alone. Now, what Alex Murdaugh didn't do, he's a lawyer himself, right? So he understood that it was just the convictions being thrown out and that he will have to face a retrial. But not everybody knows that. I don't know if you guys have heard about this guy, Paul Warner Powell. One of the most horrific pieces of shit, just a terrible, terrible human being, but also one of the truly dumbest. He had a situation very close to Alex Murdaugh, but we'll get into it here. On January 29th, 1999, Paul Warner Powell was 20 years old and had a relationship with this family, the Reeds, in Manassas, Virginia. He had known Stacy Reed for about 2.5 years and wanted to date her. Powell was described as a, quote, self-avowed racist and white supremacist. He was angry that Stacy was dating Sean Wilkerson, a black classmate. That day, Stacy came home from school before noon and found Powell waiting. He left briefly when he realized an adult might come home for lunch, then returned around 12:45 armed with a survival knife, butterfly knife, box cutter, and 9mm pistol. Powell attacked Stacy in her house. At first, he tried to claim the stabbing actually happened accidentally during the struggle, but the autopsy evidence did not fit that story. Court records describe blunt force injuries and a chest wound consistent with the knife being twisted, partly withdrawn, and reinserted. After killing Stacy, Powell did not flee. He stayed in the house, smoked a cigarette, drank iced tea, and waited for her sister to come home from school. When her sister Christy arrived, she found her sister's body. Powell then forced Christy into the basement, did horrific things to her, on top of trying to kill her by strangling her and cutting multiple places where blood would be drawn. Christie miraculously survived and later testified against him. So in his trial in 2000, Powell was convicted of capital murder for Stacy's killing and sentenced to death. He was also convicted of abducting, forcibly assaulting, and attempting to murder Christie, receiving 3 life sentences and major fines for those crimes. But the capital murder conviction had a legal problem. Under Virginia law, prosecutors needed the murder to be tied to a specific aggravating crime. For example, rape or attempted rape connected to the murder. The Virginia Supreme Court ruled that the first capital murder conviction could not stand. The indictment and proof did not properly support capital murder under the theory used at trial. The court said the evidence at best supported first-degree murder for Stacy's death, and it remanded the case for a new trial on no greater than first-degree murder. So Powell still had life sentences for what he did to Christie, but for Stacy's murder, it looked like the death penalty might be off the table. Then Powell makes the mistake that made this case famous. After the reversal, Powell believed he could not be charged with capital murder again because of double jeopardy. He thought he had just beaten the death penalty. So on October 21st, 2001, he wrote an obscene, taunting letter to the prosecutor who had handled the first trial. In that letter, Powell said that because he believed he could not be retried for capital murder, he would tell the rest of what happened on January 29th, 1999. He then described previously unknown details, including an attempted sexual assault of Stacy before he killed her. That was the missing piece. Prosecutors then used this letter as new evidence. They dropped the remanded first-degree murder case and got a new capital murder indictment, this time charging that Powell killed Stacy during or after the attempted rape of Stacy herself. The Virginia Supreme Court held that the new prosecution was allowed because Powell had not been previously acquitted on that specific capital murder theory, and the new evidence came from Powell's own voluntary confession after the first trial. So he thought he was legally untouchable, and he bragged about it, not only bragging about what they knew, bragging about new details they had no idea about, and literally the linchpin of what they needed to convict him or at least try him for capital murder. So in 2003, 2 years after, less than 2 years after he wrote that braggadocious letter, he was convicted again of capital murder. A Prince William County jury recommended death for the second time, relying heavily on the letter in which Powell had revealed details prosecutors did not have before. And it's just, again, thank God for how dumb these people are, but how smart they think they are. Because without it, a lot of bad people would get away with worse shit. The Virginia Supreme Court affirmed the second conviction and death sentence in 2004. And Paul Warner Powell was executed on March 18th, 2010 at Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia. He chose the electric chair instead of lethal injection, which, wow. Yeah, that's a hard pass from me, dog. The electric chair. My Lord, you're just being cooked from the inside? No thanks. People's eyes exploding? Nah, I'm good. But thank God for him. Chose the most painful way to go. March 18th, 2010, he was dead at 9:09 p.m. And when he was asked for his last words, he didn't say anything. And that's the first time that happened. The day before the execution, Stacy and Christie's mother said the family spoke with Powell by phone for more than an hour and that he apologized. Christie and her mother witnessed the execution. Wow. So, yeah, needless to say, Alex Murdaugh understands he's not going to be doing that. So from Alex Murdaugh, one bad parent to a couple of bad parents, let's talk about Mackenzie Shirilla. I don't know if you guys have seen the Netflix documentary that came out, but boy, is that worth watching. It is so sad what happened to Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, and infuriating on every other count. Let's get into it. Who is Mackenzie Shirilla? Mackenzie Frances Shirilla. Frances, which I think is a perfect middle name for this girl. She's got the same name as the bad guy from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Frances. My daddy said I could have anything I want for my birthday. Good for you and your father. That's the type of attitude that she and her parents both have. Mackenzie Frances Shirilla was born August 2nd, 2004, just 2 months after I graduated high school. She's out here giving a bad name to us Leos, us August babies. She grew up in Strongsville, Ohio, which from the documentary seemed very middle class, very, normal upbringing, kids drinking underage, getting into trouble, but just good old classic American fun. Her parents are Natalie and Steve Shirilla. There wasn't much known about this girl until, these documentaries started coming out on Hulu and Netflix. And everyone was like, especially her parents, she's just a normal girl. She's got a good attitude. She's getting out there. She's trying to become an influencer. She smokes a little bit of weed, but, I'm glad she's smoking weed and not shooting it up. She was described as active on social media and had an interest in modeling. When they interviewed people, they were like, oh, my God. Mackenzie and Dominic, they were inseparable. It was just them against the world. And then you realize their relationship was so toxic and it was not going to end unless something terrible happened, which unfortunately it did. They were dating for about 4 years. Her parents let her move in with Dominic, who was 3 years older, when she was like 16 years old, which that to me seems like a crime. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I think, when you're in high school, every single year, if you're only 1 year older than somebody, that's still a massive difference. When you're already out of high school and you're dating a high schooler, it ain't good. Some places it's borderline criminal. But yeah, people were saying they had the perfect relationship. They looked affectionate and they talked about future plans. They were going to get married. So Dominic's mother, Christine Russo, described the relationship as increasingly strained in the 6 months before the crash, with fighting, arguments, breakups, threats, and Mackenzie becoming more possessive of Dominic. Now, I believe that Dominic's mother would know a little bit more about that because generally speaking, when someone's being the nutcase, and I believe both of them could have been, but when one person is specifically the firecracker, she had a sparky personality. They're not usually telling their parents that they're doing all that stuff. So there's a version of Mackenzie and Dominic where they say they're young, attached, living together, living free, us against the world. Then there's the version that comes out in court, which is arguments, threats, breakup talk, and witnesses describing a relationship that had become completely unstable and unmanageable. So for anybody that doesn't know this case or it sounds familiar, Mackenzie Shirilla ended up crashing her car. She was the only one that survived. She had two passengers, Dominic and Davion. The crash happened on July 31st, 2022. In the weeks before that, there had already been a conflict between Mackenzie and Dominic. One major incident discussed at trial happened earlier in July of 2022. A friend of the Russo family, Christopher Martin, testified that Dominic called his mother upset while he was in a car with Mackenzie. Martin went to pick him up. He testified that while Mackenzie and Dominic were arguing...
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Mackenzie said, I'm going to wreck this car right now. He also testified that he saw a physical struggle inside the vehicle before Dominic got out and left with him. I mean, there's adult relationships where this happens too. People think they can put hands on each other, and it's when it's getting to that point, both people just got to slap high fives and say goodbye. Now, does that happen? Nope. Sometimes. But it's so hard to get out of these relationships. Mackenzie's parents have disputed parts of that version because, of course, they have. In Netflix's documentary, they point to the messages they say support Mackenzie's side and argue that Dominic was the one who had made a threat involving the car. People reported that Mackenzie's parents still deny that she intentionally crashed and dispute the prosecution's framing of the earlier incident. Apparently, there are also videos from July 2022 where Mackenzie could be heard threatening Dominic and threatening to break into his house. Those videos were found on a phone that had been inside Dominic's house and were later given to the police. There were also texts between Mackenzie and Dominic from 2020 through July 2022. People obtained messages from the Strongsville Police Department and reported that the texts included arguments, accusations, threats, reckless driving references, and anger issues on both sides of the relationship. So by the time we get to the crash, there are already several threads on the record. The relationship history, the prior car threat allegation, the videos, the texts, and the question of whether the crash was a sudden accident or part of an escalating pattern. Because of course you don't want to believe that this person did this on purpose. So what exactly happened? The night before, on the night of July 30th into the early morning of July 31st, Mackenzie, Dominic, Davion, and other friends were hanging out. One of the girls said that it was a sleepover. According to the court records, they went to a graduation party for about 25 or 30 minutes, then later ended up at another friend's house. One witness described the atmosphere as, quote, quite chill, like a normal sleepover. He said that people listened to music, smoked marijuana, and he did not see Mackenzie and Dominic fighting that night. Davion Flanagan's Life 360 data placed him at this house from about 11:39 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. Then the app showed him traveling from 5:30 a.m. until about 5:36 when the crash occurred. A friend had told police and the court that Life 360 recorded Davion moving at 90 miles per hour. So in the documentary, they had some concerned friends that showed up and said, hey, we have his last known movements. They were flying. Mackenzie was driving, Dominic was in the front passenger seat, Davion was in the back. The crash happened near an intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive in Strongsville. Police received a 911 call reporting that a vehicle had crashed into a building. When the officers arrived, the car was so badly damaged that one officer described it as looking like it had been cut in half. This scene was insane, and they blurred out a lot because there were two dead bodies in the car, but the police were shook. That was pretty tough to see and listen to, that they knew they were dealing with two very young individuals who had passed away just after high school graduation, or just after. It was in July. One officer testified that after first responders realized Mackenzie was alive, one of the first things she said was, "How is Davion?" Which, that's interesting. Because that was the new friend. That's what Mackenzie's mother, Natalie, said. You guys need to spare my daughter's life. Davion, he was just a new friend. I don't think she even said his name. So at the beginning, this was treated like a crash investigation. The investigators started looking at vehicle data, surveillance footage, the route, the relationship history, and prior incidents. A crash reconstruction expert reviewed the Toyota's event data recorder. I didn't realize until the Karen Reed trial that all these cars now, they have so much data going into them. According to the appeals court opinion, the data showed the accelerator pedal was fully depressed 4.6 seconds before the crash. So the gas pedal is being stomped through the floor. At the scene, there were no skid marks. Nothing to show you that she had tried to stop this from occurring in any way whatsoever. The engine throttle stayed at 100% until 1.6 seconds before the crash, when the vehicle went airborne over a curb. The data showed absolutely no braking in those final seconds. The vehicle also registered steering movements, a small right turn, a small left turn, and then a significant right-hand turn. And there are forensic experts that inspected the Camry and found no evidence of a pre-crash mechanical or electrical failure that would have caused the loss of acceleration control, loss of braking, or loss of steering. In the documentary, you could see in the police footage that they got, in some of the pictures, there was her slipper was underneath the accelerator. And they were like, well, maybe the slipper caused it. The mechanical expert testified that the driver's foot was on the accelerator when the crash occurred and that the slipper could not have been caught in a way that caused unintended acceleration before the crash. So they were like, nice try, but nah. The gear shift evidence is one of the most unusual parts of the case. The data showed the gear shift moved between drive, sequential, and neutral during the final 4.7 seconds before the crash. The expert testified that the gear shift had to manually be moved. So if you're making inferences from that, it's quite possible that Dominic and Davion were trying to fight her to put it in neutral and that they weren't able to do it. So the appeals court summarized it this way. Someone inside the vehicle manually shifted the gear into neutral, but it was forced back into drive as the car continued forward. Mackenzie never took her foot off the accelerator and never hit the brake in the seconds before the crash, even as the car passed through an intersection, went airborne, landed, and continued through an industrial sign and hit a brick wall on the side of that building. The defense later raised other possible explanations. A medical episode, a seizure, a mini stroke, POTS, P-O-T-S, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a disorder of the autonomic nervous system. It causes an exaggerated increase in heart rate, tachycardia, while standing up. Symptoms include dizziness, lightheadedness, and fainting, which usually improve upon lying down. So that was something that her mother brought up on the stand. Well, we found out that she had POTS. It was, debilitating. Was it, though? They said that she could have been distracted, panicked, had loss of control, or accidentally hit the accelerator instead of the brake. That classic thing where for 5 full seconds, you're stomping on the gas and being like, why are we slowing down? The prosecutor's version was that the crash data showed acceleration, no braking, no mechanical failure, and enough control over the vehicle to continue towards the building. So her mother, Natalie Shirilla, testified that Mackenzie was diagnosed with POTS in 2017 at a Cleveland clinic. Natalie said her understanding was that POTS could cause low blood pressure, increased heart rate, wooziness, and possibly loss of consciousness. Medical records after the crash said Mackenzie's airway was intact, her breathing and circulation were normal, her pupils reacted normally, she was alert and oriented during the hospital exam, her EKG was normal, and medical personnel did not note cardiovascular, neurological, joint, or muscle symptoms. So then come her driver's license records. Showed that when Mackenzie applied for a temporary license after the crash, because there was some time, this was not always treated as a murder case. In the time it took them to build their case, she was out there hanging out with the parents of Dominic, his family. They were giving her hugs, asking if she was okay. She loved that. She attested that she did not have a condition causing episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control. She had made the same statement when she got her previous license in April 2021. And so she wanted to drive so bad again after all this happened because she thought the community was going to lift her up. Her mother also testified that Mackenzie had a bad POTS episode a week or two before the crash, but said she did not take Mackenzie to her doctor or limit her driving. And then comes the, these weird interactions that her and her mother have where they're speaking a different language. It's some sort of weird, I don't know. It sounds like a legitimate language, but it's some sort of Pig Latin something. And when it was first being put out there, it was just Mackenzie saying it to her mom. Like, and that was when she was in the hospital bed and she was trying to communicate to her mother. From people who have broken this down, they said that she was asking if they should tell the police that she had a seizure or something. And her mother's acknowledging that she's saying something. And it's like, okay, maybe she did have a fucking seizure or stroke because she's speaking in gibberish. But it was gibberish that her mother completely understood. And I didn't think that her mother actually spoke it until they had jailhouse phone calls come out. These morons know that they're being recorded. It's told to you, you are being recorded on a hot line. We are going to use this shit against you. And they are still laughing and laughing about how, oh my God, did you know that the UK is writing about you? You made it international. Oh my God, Kim Kardashian's going to be your lawyer. She's going to take this on for you. And then the mother starts speaking in that fucking weird language. But through all of it, Mackenzie says she doesn't remember the crash, but she knows there was no intent whatsoever. Cuyahoga County grand jury indicted her on 12 counts, 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of drug possession, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools. Mackenzie waived her right to a jury trial and chose a bench trial, which, when you're trying to play on emotion and distract from facts, that's great for a jury. You can play on people's heartstrings all the time. But when you go to a bench trial, oh, you better be 100% not guilty because the judges understand more than anybody what the hell's happening in a courtroom. The trial judge was Judge Nancy Margaret Russo, and the judge found Mackenzie guilty on all counts. She got 2 15-year terms. So 15 to life. Those can either be concurrent, which means at the same time, or consecutive, which is one right after the other. So for all intents and purposes, she's serving 15 to life. And the judge said that she's positive that she's not going to get out of parole she's not going to get out on parole the first time, which I don't know how you're legally allowed to even say that without the defense being able to come after you. But the judge said it, and that's exactly what she did. She said, you know, she's getting 2 15-year terms, but she's serving them at the same time. And I'm doing that because I don't think she's going to get out on parole the first time. The trial court said the crash showed purpose and intent, and the judge described Mackenzie's actions as controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. So Mackenzie's parents, Natalie and Steve Shirilla, they're going to die on this hill for the rest of their life. They're continuing to support her and maintain that the crash was not intentional. They do not believe Mackenzie is guilty of intentionally killing Dominic and Davion. And boy, is their public image taking a hit. There were people saying, oh, they should be brought up on charges. I don't think so. I think these two are getting absolutely everything they deserve via word of mouth. And it just goes from everything. In the crash documentary, literally her father, Steve, was wearing a shirt that said, boom. How tone deaf can we possibly be? And they're talking about what a great daughter she was, how she never got in trouble at school. Well, maybe she did with her mouth. Yeah, because she was mean girling it all the fucking time at school, making people's lives miserable. Like, we've all grown up with people like that. They're super entitled. They think they can do nothing wrong because there's no consequences for their actions. Even if there are in school, when they get home, the parents laugh about it, give them a high five. I completely understand wanting to protect your kid, but you can't go to the lengths where you're completely disrespecting the victims in this case. And apparently after the documentary came out, her dad, Steve Shirilla, was placed on administrative leave from his job as an art and digital media teacher at Mary Queen of Peace School in Cleveland. Because he had said, you know, he allowed her to smoke weed underage and, you know, it's better than shooting up and blah, 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 which, sure, it is better than shooting up, but should you be actively cheering her on while it's not legal for her to do so? No. I grew up with a lot of people in my family where, as a group, they're making bad decisions. People who are constantly getting in trouble at school and with the law, and yet their parents are constantly going around being like, well, that guy's an asshole. No, maybe it's your kid. And more than that, maybe it's you. But these are not the types of people to have any internal monologue or inward-facing conversations with themselves whatsoever. It's just not possible. So as of now, Natalie and Steve, they're not being criminally charged with anything, which, again, I think that's a stretch. But I think there is due criticism for both of them. Their continued insistence that Mackenzie is completely innocent, the coded language conversations, the POTS argument that they ended up saying that she didn't have an official diagnosis. Also, the victim impact statements. The mother goes up there after Mackenzie has been convicted, before she's being sentenced, and she is just, let me play it.
I just want to say, am I allowed to address them at all? Sure. I just want to say to the families that I'm broken, sad, and lost, and my heart hurts for everyone, okay? Davion was her new friend, and Dom was the love of her life, and he was part of our family, okay? I'm just so sorry that this happened, and we're heartbroken, okay? And then, Your Honor, this was a terrible, tragic nightmare accident to have happened that she has no memory of, and she will never emotionally or physically recover from it. She almost died too, and we're asking that you please not run the sentence as consecutive. He was family, and we all loved each other. That morning of the accident, she called. I got a phone call that there was a car accident. Okay, so we went to the hospital, and I didn't even know who was in the car. The names had not been confirmed yet, and I'm gonna cry because I missed Dom so much. We loved him so much. So I called Dom, like, over and over again, praying that he was going to answer the phone, and he didn't answer the phone. So then I tried to call his mom, and she didn't answer the phone either. And I still didn't know who was in the car. I didn't even know if she was alive. I didn't know what was happening. So then we were in the waiting room, and then his mom she did call me, so I answered the phone, and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know who was in the car. Like, what's happening? Was that Dom? And she said, what do you mean? My son is dead. And And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then she said something like, and now I have to wait until your kid's out of the hospital. And then I didn't hear the rest. I was like, we loved him so much. And I hung up the phone. I did not talk about social media. I didn't even know what was going on yet. Okay. So then that was it.
So this so far is not a victim impact statement. This is just a total explanation of why her daughter should not be held accountable, which she's been doing since she was a fucking baby.
So in the hospital, that Vitality post, I commented on that because somebody had called her a murderer, okay? And she's not a murderer, so she didn't even have her phone.
Actually, she is. She is convicted of murdering 2 people.
At that point, because the police had still had it, okay? So I jumped on, and I was like, you know, she's not a murderer. She's more sad than most of these people commenting. She's been trying to get in touch with you. I mean, at that point, it was just an accident. So I commented on her behalf, not because of the modeling opportunity. Who cares about that? I don't want them to refer to her as a murderer, okay? And I don't even know how that comment got on the phone because the police still had her device and she could not access her phone or social media. That's why I did it. And
this is multiple minutes of over-explaining why she should not be sent away.
I had called them asking if they could shut down social media because people were calling her a murderer and making death threats and organizing groups to, you know, take her out when she got out of the hospital and stuff. So I don't even want her phone. I don't care about her phone. I don't care about social media. I just wanted them to stop calling her a murderer. So my name is Natalie.
Oh my God. And she goes on to say, the judge actually calls her out, which was incredible. It's not in this clip, but she says, I'm not hearing you mention the victims at all. And she said, we loved Dom and Davion. He was just a new friend. Completely disregarding him as a human being. These people are getting all the bad attention they absolutely deserve because their tone changes very much based on who they're talking to and how they want to be perceived. When they think no one is listening because they're too stupid to realize that their jailhouse conversations are being recorded, this is what they sound like.
It was published in England.
What?
Yes.
It's world news?
I think the Daily Mail just publishes it in all their publications, but yeah, the UK.
It's on the Daily Mail?
In UK.
Maybe Kim Kardashian will reach out herself.
That's what I'm saying. I'm hoping. We're getting there. I was going to do this anyway, so this is great.
Oh, just a lot of laughing. Kim Kardashian's going to break them out of jail. Yeah, fat chance your lawyers missed the deadline to be able to file the appeal. And all evidence suggests that she did intend to do this. There was even more than just the data in the car. There was data from her phone. She had made a trip to that specific location that is not, on the way home from the grocery store or anything. It is in an industrial park that you have to go down on purpose. She had been there 7 times in the days leading up to the actual accident. Another thing that she tried to say is that, maybe she wasn't in the right state of mind. They did a blood test on her. She had no alcohol, no drugs in her system whatsoever. And that seems to be a rare occurrence for her. So maybe she didn't want to get a DUI on the way to doing what she actually ended up doing, which is killing her friend Davion and boyfriend Dominic. It is just disgusting how the parents try to play the victim and try to act like they're, just innocent people being set up. And this is just a huge miscarriage of justice. Everyone's got it wrong. But then they're knowingly on a recorded phone call laughing about how they're internationally famous now. It's just disturbing. But Natalie is going to continue that charade. She's going to keep saying, along with her husband, Steve, that her daughter's doing the best she can in prison. She's been written up dozens of times already. And it's only been, her incarceration admission date was August 31st, 2023. Her expected release date / parole eligibility date is October 29th, 2037, which means that her first parole board hearing is listed as September 2037. I don't see that happening in any way whatsoever, with the callous laughing about the circumstances, about how they're, being published internationally. Now they're known. Her saying that she's not getting into trouble but her record actually shows that she has a lot of write-ups. And when she came out on the documentary after being incarcerated, she's no longer, Mackenzie the white girl. She has gone full chola status. She's got like a comb over and a bun. I think we were about 5 seconds short of her patting her head to itch it. Like, she is just trying to fit in. But sometimes the best places where people fit in is prison, because they're antisocial people. And I don't mean that as they're mean or they don't want to talk to people. They literally cannot function in society without being a detriment to everybody else and putting everybody else in danger. So that's as much as we know right now for Mackenzie Shirilla. Her nickname in prison, by the way, is Shirilla the Killa. It's just absolutely sickening to see. And, it doesn't seem like she's learning anytime soon about the impact that she's caused and the hurt that she's caused a lot of families and a lot of people. So we'll keep you updated on that story and more to come. It's just, another day in death and entertainment. We will see you next time. And until then, don't go dying on us. Bye-bye.